Ash has traveled the entire Pokemon world. Up to this point, he's had 17 traveling companions in his 20-year run on the air. In this video, I will be covering each and every companion Ash has traveled with, going over their teams and giving them new teams if they were to appear in Pokemon Journeys because, spoiler alert for Pokemon Journeys, Dawn is revealed to be returning in the next few episodes, and I hope we get to see some new Pokemon she caught. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, as we're still on the road to 100k. But with that all said, let's get right into the video. The first of Ash's companions is Brock. He traveled with Ash the longest, and is a good place to start. Before Ash meets Brock, he's known as the Pewter City Gym Leader, and owns 2 Pokemon that he battles with. He also takes them when leaving with Ash. And now that Brock is traveling with Ash, he completely forgets about his rock-type specialty by catching Zubat at Mount Moon, Vulpix at Scissor Street, and a Pineco near Azalea Town. If you're familiar with Brock's original team, then you'd know that none of his Pokemon evolve until Johto. And Vulpix gets done dirty, as Brock refunds the Pokemon to Suzy, its original trainer. Now, we've reached the point where Ash travels to Hoenn. Brock, of course, follows Ash, but not before returning home, back to Pewter Gym, leaving his Onix, Geodude, and Crobat behind. In Hoenn, Brock remembers he's a Rock-type gym leader, and is excited to catch Gen 3 Rock-types. Yeah, you can probably tell that this never happens. Brock will instead catch a Lotad and a Mudkip pretty early on. It's during Brock's time in Hoenn when Lotad evolves into Lombre, then eventually into Ludicolo! Since Ash loses in the Hoenn League, we're now on the battle frontier. Mudkip evolves into Marshtomp before Brock returns to the Pewter Gym, right before Ash's battle with Brandon. This is when Brock gets to meet up with all his old Pokemon, while Onix is revealed to have evolved. Oh yeah, it was before Brock returns to Pewter City that he also captures a wild Bonsly. This will be important later, trust me. Brock departs from Ash again, but 2 episodes later, and our favorite donut-eating companion is in Sinnoh. This time, however, Brock left his fortress and Marshtomp back at Pewter Gym, leaving Bonsly as his only Pokemon. While Brock is in Sinnoh, he catches a Krogunk, has his Bonsly evolve, and hatches a Happiny. Brock's Happiny actually ends up evolving in the second to last episode of Diamond and Pearl, believe it or not. I don't think Nurse Joy was all that impressed though. 1 episode later, and Brock leaves Ash, for good this time. He arrives at Pewter Gym to learn that Forrest, his younger brother, will become the new Pewter City Gym Leader. After this, Brock will still get his moments in the spotlight by getting to meet up with Cilan in the Johto region. Krogunk still gets to do what he does best as well. But it's not until Sun and Moon where we get to see Brock's team of Steelix, Geodude, Crobat, and Sudowoodo. But during his time in Alola, Brock adds a Comfey to his team. Now since Brock has just appeared last series, it's likely his team won't change that much if he reappeared in Journeys. So for that reason, I'ma still give Brock his Steelix, Geodude, and Crobat. But I feel he would have done some traveling and caught himself a Choodle and Galar, which would have evolved into a Dreadnought by the time he would meet up with Ash. Also, his Marshtomp would have already evolved into Swampert, and just like his Steelix, Brock will also Mega Evolve Swampert for a battle with Ash or Go. Moving on from Brock's team, God, that took long. We now get to cover Ash's first traveling companion, Misty. Misty starts things off with 3 Pokemon on her team, that being Staryu, Starmie, and a Goldeen. And during her time following Ash in Kanto, she'll make amazing captures, such as Horsey and Psyduck. Misty also adds the first ever Gen 2 Pokemon to appear in the anime on her team. Returning to the Cerulean Gym, Misty ends up leaving her Horsey and Starmie behind, as she will soon take a rather uneventful trip to the Orange Islands, since Misty only captures a Poliwag in her time there. But it's not until Johto, where the same Poliwag evolves into Poliwhirl, and then into Politoed, after wearing a King's Rock. Not leaving anything out, Misty also captures a wild Corsola somewhere in the Whirl Islands. Sadly, this is it for Misty, as she says goodbye to Ash and doesn't follow him to Hoenn. Instead, she heads back to Cerulean Gym to take over as gym leader, and this is where we get to meet Misty's Gyarados. But it's more like Misty meets Gyarados. Being the Cerulean Gym Leader, Misty still gets to show up throughout the Advanced series, releasing her newly evolved Togetic and hatching an Azurill. However, after this, Misty isn't really heard from again, only being mentioned in Diamond and Pearl, and appearing in a flashback in Black and White. But after disappearing 573 episodes, Misty finally gets to return alongside Brock in Sun and Moon. Misty's final team was revealed to be Staryu, Psyduck, Corsola, and Gyarados, who can Mega Evolve of course. Similar to Brock, I feel as her team wouldn't change that much, keeping a roster of Staryu, Psyduck, and Gyarados. And I feel as Misty would have been inspired by Ash to travel the world in pursuit of stronger water types that she's never seen before. Misty ends up in the Galar region and catches a Sobble, which evolves all the way into Inteleon, and a Froakie in the Kalos region, to her team respectively. When meeting back up with Ash, she will still rely on her Mega Gyarados, of course. Tracey. Tracey was introduced all the way back in 1999, when the Pokemon Company thought that Brock was just a little too racial for the Western audience. Tracey ended up following Ash throughout the Orange Islands, starting off with a team of just Venonat and Marill. Tracey only makes one capture though, which is an elderly Scyther, on Murcott Island. But it's once Ash goes to Johto, Brock returns, and Tracey goes off to work as Professor Oak's assistant. After the Orange Islands ended though, it seems that the Pokemon Company didn't know what to do with Tracey. He appeared most of the time at Professor Oak's lab for the next few series, also having somewhat of a role in Pokemon Chronicles. But ever since the Battle Frontier, Tracey has not had a speaking role since, showing up in black and white and reduced to a thought bubble in Pokemon Journeys. It's unlikely Tracey will ever get to be relevant again, but if he does, I want him to become interesting. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Tracey got his Scyther to evolve, and during his time as Professor Oak's assistant, I feel he would have added a Ditto to his team while researching the Kanto region, which I feel would give Tracey some relevance again. Now we can move on to May. May started things out by not liking Pokemon, while also starting a Pokemon journey at the same time. It's over time, however, May fell in love with competing in Pokemon contests. And while following Ash and Hoenn, May catches a Wurmple, later Beautyfly, Skitty, and a Bulbasaur. Now around this time, her Torchic evolves into Combusken, and later catches a Munchlax. May and her younger brother follow Ash to Kanto for the Battle Frontier, but now only with Bulbasaur and Munchlax, as she left her other Pokemon behind at Petalburg Gym. May decides to leave her Bulbasaur at Professor Oak's while adding a Squirtle to her team. During her time in Kanto, May competes in more contests, while also hatching an Eevee in Fuchsia City. May's Combusken also evolves into Blaziken, right before going up against Ash's Sceptile. However, after this, May ends up leaving Ash to follow Drew and Harley to the Johto region. Similar to Misty, May reappears in the next series, coming back halfway through Diamond and Pearl to compete in the Wallace Cup. It's revealed here that her Squirtle evolved into Wartortle, while Bulbasaur had evolved all the way into Venusaur. May's Eevee also evolved after coming into contact with an Ice Rock near Snow Point City. Once May is off though, we never hear from her again, and just assume she's still traveling the regions competing in contests. If May was to reappear in Pokemon Journeys, I feel as it would be in Hoenn, having a final team of Blaziken, of course, Snorlax, Venusaur, and Glaceon, but also catching a Bidoof and evolving it into Roserade. May would have also caught a red Floetta while competing in a Pokemon showcase in the Kalos region. Now, we move on to Max. But oh wait, time is at an eternal standstill in the Pokemon anime, meaning that Max would still be too young to own any Pokemon. But at the same time, Max hasn't had a speaking role since the end of the Battle Frontier, kinda like someone else I know. But if Max was to reappear, it would most certainly be alongside May. And I feel as he would already know the starter he's going to choose, and that would be a Trico, especially after watching Ash's Sceptile dominate in the Sinnoh League. Okay, now we can actually move on to Dawn, who starts on her Pokemon journey as Ash arrives in the Sinnoh region. How convenient. It's once Dawn picks her starter of Piplup that she's finally off with Ash and Brock. During her journey in Sinnoh, Dawn seems eager to catch some Pokemon, adding Baniri, Pachirisu, and Buizel to her team. Super early on, Dawn then takes on the role of May 2.0, in that she's also interested in Pokemon contests, while also trading her Buizel for Ash's Apom, due to Apom being more interested in contests than in battling. But right after, Apom will learn Double Hit, causing its evolution into Ambipom, somewhere in a temple or whatever, I don't know. A little time following this, and Dawn will catch herself a Swinub, who will later evolve all the way into Mamoswine. Dawn then has her Ambipom stolen from her by Mr. Ping Pong, or whatever his name is, I forgot honestly. See, Dawn doesn't have a team of 4 for that long, as she proceeds to hatch a Cyndaquil, seemingly due to Heart Gold and Soul Silver releasing in the same year. Dawn also receives a Togekiss, as a gift from Princess Salvia. But now, Dawn ends her Sinnoh journey with Ash, as she chooses to stay in the region after receiving an invitation for Baneri to be, a Pokemon model? But apparently, none of that mattered as Dawn heads off to the Hoenn region right after her Cyndaquil evolves, seemingly to compete in more contests. It soon gets more confusing as Dawn just shows up in Unova, halfway through Black and White, but no questions asked though. And it's in Unova where Dawn's Quilava gets to be revealed to Ash. But after traveling with him in Unova, and getting to compete in the Pokemon Junior Cup, Dawn quickly leaves, but to Johto this time, to compete in the Wallace Cup. Yeah, again? I'm really starting to feel like the Wallace Cup is just the anime's way to write off a character. Now, as I'm making this video, Dawn has literally just reappeared in Pokemon Journeys, where she gets to meet up with Chloe during her visit to the Sinnoh region. This episode seems like a fun reintroduction for Dawn, as she is going to reappear in next week's episode as well, where maybe we'll get to see some of her Pokemon since she meets up with Ash again. Now, looking back at Dawn's Pokemon, her party literally doesn't change at all during her time in Hoenn, but I feel as her time in Johto was different, and that's where her Quilava could have evolved in the Typhlosion. And since Dawn was in Johto for 9 years, I feel she would have caught an Igglybuff by now, of course, due to her liking cute Pokemon. We now move on to Ash's Black and White companions, starting with Iris. When she meets Ash, she aspires to be a Dragon Master, while leaving her home village with Axew and Excadrill. Similar to another gym leader that followed with Ash, Iris forgets about the Dragon type by catching a Molga. But later, the anime seemingly realizes this, making up for this by allowing Iris to catch a Dragonite, halfway through Best Wishes though. However, after catching Dragonite, Iris doesn't really get to do much, besides having really iconic battles with Dragonite. This is until everyone arrives in Kanto, and this is where Iris decides to leave Ash and head for the Johto region, to have a battle with Claire at Blackthorn Gem, which we actually get to see in a Black and White special. And here, Iris gets to battle Claire's shiny Druddigon, using her Dragonite of course. Also, while in Johto, Iris will stumble upon a Gible, again, yet in Johto, but not long after, Iris will of course add the Gible to her team. The special ends with Iris chasing a Rayquaza, with that being the last we hear from her. That was until Journeys where Iris reappeared in Unova after becoming the champion of that region. Here we get to see her updated team, with the only change being Axew's evolution all the way in Haxorus, which makes sense as she's now the champion, and a necessary change I would have made to her team. Now, it's Cilan's turn. Cilan was first introduced leading the Soriatan Gym, along with his 2 other brothers. He then abandons his position as gym leader, with his one Pokemon, to follow Ash throughout the Unova region. Wow, yeah, that seems eerily similar, in a way. In Cilan's travels with Ash, he'll better himself in his position as Pokemon Connoisseur, which in the end just leads him to geek out over trains.
Too bad it hasn't become the standard for your mouth.
Cilan's time in Unova will only lead him to catch a Dwebble and Stunfisk within the first 30 episodes of Best Wishes. Cilan's Dwebble will later end up evolving into Crustle, but it's after this evolution, whereas Pokemon really aren't seen that much. That's besides Pansage of course, but Cilan's Pokemon will actually show up in the 16th movie, while also getting somewhat of a role in the Pokemon World Tournament Junior Cup.
Junior Tournament Pokemon Cup of World Junior?
Yeah, I think I've just had my point proven. But along with Iris, Cilan leaves Ash shortly after arriving in Kanto, and seemingly follows Iris to Johto, but for a fishing rally. Instead, Cilan runs into Brock, where the two deal with the Gyarados, before parting ways, with the two never even mentioning the fact that they even traveled with Ash. Wow, what a shame. Cilan's next appearance is in the Kalos region, where here he coincidentally runs into Clemont Bonnie while participating in a fishing tournament in Lumio City. Now, if you're confused on where this takes place in the timeline, it's right after the last episode of Pokemon XY, where Ashley's back to Kanto. Not long after traveling with the two, a little around Lumiose, Cilan quickly heads off to Shallower City to visit the Tower of Mastery, and this is the last we hear from him. No, literally. This is kind of like the last time we ever hear from him, but we actually get to see Cilan in a flashback, a bit recently too in Pokemon Journeys. And yeah, it's when Ash meets back up with Iris. Now things get a little bit tricky for Cilan, if he was to reappear, because you'd think that he'd still be in Kalos, but realistically, he could be in any region, which actually makes it seem strange on why he hasn't reappeared yet. However, if Cilan was to reappear, I feel like his Pansage would have finally evolved into Simisage, while also catching himself a Skrelp, adding the Pokemon to his team during the time visiting the Kalos region. In case anyone's still watching, you now get to see Ash's XY companions, starting with Clemont, as he was the first one to meet Ash. When Ash meets Clemont, it was in Lumiose, where it was revealed he got kicked out of his own gym. Yeah, it was later revealed to be Clembot as the one who did it. As Clemont realizes that he can't get his gym membership back, he then quickly follows Ash, seeing as he just arrived in Kalos, after battling him with his only Pokemon, being a newly caught Bunnelby. Yeah, speaking of Clemont, did you know he has a sister? Yeah, all jokes aside, Clemont will catch a Dedenne for Bonnie, but in the end, it's still Clemont's Pokemon. Pretty early on as well, and Clemont will add a Chespin to his team, after finding it in Lumiose City. Clemont also reunites with a Luxio, a Pokemon he had a strong connection with when he was younger. Yeah, it's not long after meeting when Clemont adds the Luxio to his team, and later, Luxio evolves into Luxray, right before Clemont decides to head back to Lumiose Gym, needing time to prepare for his gym battle with Ash. And hey, something pretty neat, and then something I didn't know, is that while he returned to his gym, we actually get to see Clemont obliterate Sawyer and his Trico. But it's right after Ash obtains the Volt Badge, where Clemont kinda becomes irrelevant, with the next major plotline for him being the sacrifice of Clembot, but that happens at the end of the XY series. Then after that, Ash leaves, but not before they share one last battle of course. Ash is back in Kanto, and Clemont and Bonnie remain in Lumiose, where Cilan appears by saving them from a wild Clotzer, during a fishing tournament of course. Sadly, along with Cilan, this is the last time we ever hear from Clemont, and it's been about 6 years since XY ended. But at least we know where Clemont is, practically being at the Lumiose gym all the time, handing out the Volt Badge to Kalos trainers, just practically waiting to return. But whatever, I'm not a show writer. If Clemont was to reappear, I feel as he would keep the same team, but have caught a Helioptile, after looking around Kalos for more electric types. And hey, maybe Ash and Go can stop by and help him look. Look, at this point I'm just throwing out ideas for future episodes. Moving on from Clemont and Bonnie, and we now have Serena. Serena didn't start following Ash until the 7th episode, where before, she receives a Pokédex and picks her starter of Finnegan from Professor Sycamore. In the beginning, she doesn't really have that much to do. Serena catches a Pancham before finally deciding not to be a Rhyhorn racer, like her mom, and instead gains an interest in Pokemon showcases, which is basically the Kalos region's way of Pokemon contests. After doing bad in her first showcase, Serena ends up having a mental breakdown and gives herself a reasonably good looking haircut, given the fact that she doesn't use a mirror. Serena's Finnegan then evolves into Braixen, right before she gets her confidence back, by competing in any showcase she can get her way into, and during her time becoming relevant again, she'll catch an Eevee near Anastar City. That Eevee will later evolve into Sylveon, becoming less nervous and a really good Pokemon to use in these showcases. But little did we know that Eevee would be the last Pokemon we ever get to see Serena catch. Ash shall soon become Kalos' queen. Then, you know, gives Ash a little kiss before leaving off to Hoenn, after wanting to take on Pokemon contests, seeing as they originate from that region. But sadly, just like Clemont, Serena hasn't made any appearances since XY ended. And with the show's transition to a more comedic style in Sun and Moon, it gets more unlikely that Serena will ever reappear, as that means, oh no, they'll have to bring up the kiss, or the more likely option of just it being forgotten and never brought up again. If Serena was to reappear, it would have to be in her home region, as she would still most likely be the Kalos queen. Serena would keep her 3 Pokemon, while adding a Spritzee to her team. And keeping up to tradition, I feel as her Braixen would have evolved into Delphox. There could also be a small, and I mean super small, chance that Serena could have came across a female Pikachu, catching it right away, getting to add a new Pokemon to her team, while also having a memory of Ash. And maybe in a future episode, we'll get to see the XY gang back together in Kalos. We have to get that at least one more time. We actually made it, and by it, I mean Alola. Now Alola is a little different, as for the first time, we don't get to see Ash travel from gym to gym, collecting badges along with other gym leaders. Instead, we watch Ash go to school, having 5 classmates that all have Pokemon. Well, most do. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that we're going to do everyone's Pokemon team at the same time. Everybody starts off with their signature Pokemon, and some even having ride Pokemon, such as Lana's Lapras and Kiawe's Charizard. The first change to anybody's team, however, is when Lily hatches an Alolan Vulpix, out of an egg that was found on Mount Lanakila by Samson Oak. Vulpix becomes Lily's first Pokemon, but in the end, she's too afraid to touch it. The next change comes not long after, with Malo's Bonsweet evolving into a Steenie. But then, Sophocles makes his first and only capture of the series, that being a Charjabug. About 10 or so episodes later, and Kiawe adds an Alolan Marowak to his team while at Wele Volcano Park. Also, this is now the point where everyone along with Ash will travel to Pallet Town Kanto to meet up with Brock and Misty at Professor Oak's, where we get to see all of Ash's old Pokemon. Well, Bulbasaur and Totodile on Corphish, but that's for like a few seconds. Coming back to Alola, and nothing really happens for the time being, and about 60 or so episodes later, and Steenie will evolve into Serena, while Alana will be the one to add an Eevee to her team, who, not gonna lie, rocked a pretty mean haircut. Then later, Sophocles' Charjabug evolves into a Vikavolt, and Lana's Poplio finally evolves after being introduced more than 100 episodes ago. The last change to anybody's team, however, is when Lana's Brionne quickly evolves in the Primarina, which happens right before everyone participates in the Alola League. The league that, you know, Ash wins. But it's after Ash leaves Alola that everybody seemingly goes their own way, while also staying in Alola at the same time. Well, besides Lily, but we'll get to that later. It seems that everybody went their own way until Ash returns back to Alola rather quickly recently in Pokemon Journeys, where we get to see everybody again, along with the exact same teams as if nothing has changed since Ash left. Okay, now, besides Lily, who's traveling in an unknown region with Gladion to find their father, everybody has already been revisited in Pokemon Journeys. But maybe later on in the series, they'll appear again, and maybe with some new Pokemon. Totally, in my opinion, Malo catches a Fomantis, Kiawe catches a Salandit, who will later end up evolving into Salazzle, which happens around the same time that Kiawe finds a Litten living around his family's ranch. Kiawe will later end up tracking down and catch the Litten, after being reminded of Ash. Moving on, I feel as Lana would have used a Water Stone on Eevee by now having a powerful Vaporeon on her team. Yeah, okay, hear me out for this one. I want to make Sophocles interesting, with him finding and researching a fossil during his vacation time at the Moss Deep City's Space Center. Unknowingly, that fossil will later be uncovered to be a Dracozolt. And after finding out that this unknown Pokemon is part electric type, Sophocles will immediately add the ancient electric type to his team. And Lily, all we really know about her is that she's on a train somewhere. But I'm gonna say that this might be in the Galar region. I guess you could say it somewhat resembles it. And I don't know, man, I just feel like Galar is a good place for her to return, and with the Hattern and Snom on her team, as I feel she would have had the motivation to finally become a proper Pokemon trainer. And with that, we have all the teams of Ash's former classmates completed. But it's not only that, you've watched through all 17 of Ash's companions. And in conclusion, Pokemon Journey seems to be really focused on the anime's canon, by already bringing back Iris and then recently Dawn, which in the end leaves the door open for practically anybody to return. Even Tracey! Oh my god. Okay, that's all I gotta say, and if you made it to the end, I'm eternally grateful. Remember, subscribing would help me out a lot, and like always, don't forget to catch me in my next video.